Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video, we're going to be having some fun. We're going to be making some predictions for the upcoming Savage raids in Final Fantasy XIV. Basically, I'm going to be looking back through my footage of the normal mode versions of the Cruiserweight Arcadian encounters, and just making predictions. Just a fun little thing to do while we wait for Tuesday, see what we get right, see what we get wrong, and then we get to just see what's outright added, which is especially true in the third and fourth fights, which usually have a bunch of brand new stuff when we get into the Savage difficulty, especially in the second tier to boot. So, without further ado, we've got a lot of footage to go through. I'm just going to look through my first clears, and we're going to go from there. I might have to skip around a little bit because I think there's a wipe in some of the fights, and these are actually pretty long encounters because they were done day one, but all the same, doesn't really matter. So, the first fight against Dancing Green. It's very important to remember that the first and usually second encounters don't usually change that much. So, a lot of the times you can make some really basic predictions and kind of get a little bit close to what would be correct. So for Dancing Green, he starts with all these different half-room AoEs. I fully expect there to be half-room AoEs, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's also pulsing AoEs on like the tanks or the supports or in general, or the DPS, like conal AoEs that are baited, near or far. But more than anything, it's easy enough to predict that the half-room, the 2-snap, and the 4-snap are all going to be present in some capacity. I just won't be surprised if 2-snap and 4-snap also have some variant that hits, like 4-snap might hit people in pairs and 2-snap might hit people in light parties while you're actually doing the half room and then need to move over. So those are basic. The funky floor, I think, is largely going to remain the same, but I think the funky floor is going to be combined with some of the other mechanics later, and I'll make specific note of that when we get to it. And then I fully expect like full beat and things like that, split damage AoEs, whether they become, you know, pair AoEs or light parties. There's a lot of just saying, hey, there's light parties or pairs. Like, you can honestly just predict that in a lot of places, and you would probably be right when it comes to Savage predictions. For example, here, there's 4 different spotlights. There's not really a good reason for there to be 4 spotlights, but you know what would make sense? If there were pairs during the spotlights, or if there was even the chance for there could be light parties, or even maybe spreads that happen right afterward. The spotlights could be bigger. The spotlights could be smaller. There could be 8 spotlights instead of 4, and maybe that's a tell for doing a spread versus a stack. So then you need to do like color pairs and make sure you have your own quadrants with the rest of the room. And all of that is important. I also expect that the actual pattern for these, the way they're just going back and forth, it'll probably be a little more involved. We do see a little bit of that later on in the normal mode. But I do expect the spotlights, the dancing, the needing to be in the spotlights mixed in with other AoEs. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Funky Floor shows up during that, or even another half room in a more dangerous section. Maybe it's like light parties and half of the room isn't safe, so you have to like get into light parties while doing that. And this is the other thing. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Funky Floor and this happen at the same time, which makes it a little bit more nerve-wracking to actually do all the mechanics with a half. I honestly just expect the half rooms to get thrown in like nonstop. Like, half of these mechanics, I think you could throw in a do the hustle 2-step or 4-step twist prediction, and you'd probably be getting closer to correct and what's going to happen. But I really think, now that I think about it, I really do think 2-snap twist and 4-snap twist are going to have like pairs or light parties. Like, so 2 and 4, whenever we see those numbers in an encounter, like even just looking back at Black Cat, like the name of her most basic skill, it was very telling for like what we were going to do, like how we were going to be grouping up with the rest of the party. And so a group 1 north, group 2 south kind of situation for that, or even, you know, pairs that line up along one side and then need to cross over. I wouldn't be surprised if every single snap and the twist all have like light party hits and or pair hits that all need to be done, or even just when you cross over after the fact. A lot of possibilities. So for this phase, I don't think this phase happens at all in Savage. I think that when these frogs come out, they're going to tether to players, and the players are going to be the ones that aim the half room AoE. So you're going to need like 8 different spots for your party potentially, and all of you need to aim your frogs out. Very similar to the shadows if you've done E10S against Shadowkeeper, but I'm going to guess there's going to be a little more restrictive. If they're going to give us 8 at a time and not 4 at a time, it definitely changes things. But at minimum, I expect maybe, you know, first supports get it or first DPS gets it, and then the other ones do, and they need to aim out while the boss itself does a half room cleave or a 2-snap twist, or, you know, there's light parties or pairs or something like that. I just start adding light parties and pairs to most things. These I expect to just show up a lot more. I actually expect these to just be faster, maybe a little bit harder to see, and done at a more stressful time in terms of encounter timing. But we already see some pretty good uses of those Afro Frogs in terms of how they mix with the spotlights later here in normal mode. And I expect that's probably going to be a way that they get used. Even this is pretty indicative of something that we had to do in Savage. So this part right here, there's Funky Floor and a 4-snap twist, or a 2-snap twist or a 4-snap twist. I think it can be either or. And you have to know to basically dodge on the side at the right time while doing the floor. That's not too dissimilar from something that happens in Titan Savage in E4S, where he can punch the same side twice, or he can punch two opposite sides, and then there's the expanding AoE that starts in one spot and then pulses outward. That can largely change the pattern that you need to follow when you're dodging it. And it's interesting to see a normal mode. It's a lighter version of that, but it's a similar-ish idea. So that tells me that'll probably be something we see. Now, this section, honestly, I think, again, is another really good tell of some stuff we'll see in Savage. With only 3 spotlights, it does change things considerably. There's a few really obvious things they could do, which is why I don't think they will do them, where if it's only 1 safe spotlight, it's light parties. And if it's 2 safe spotlights, I'm sorry, if it's 2 safe spotlights, it's light parties. If it's 1 safe spotlight, it's a stack. That's redundant because you would only have 1 choice anyway. If anything, it would almost make more sense for it to just be a stack regardless, and then you need to all agree on the same spot to go to, and it needs to be one of the and only one of the 3 spots is safe. I would expect these frogs to be cutting off a section with a half room with a spotlight, and only 1 spotlight actually ends up being safe, especially if there's only 2 spotlights or something like that in Savage. But the spotlight combined with the Afro Frogs and the twists, again, I think just a really good tell. And by this point, there's not really much else to say. Deep Cut, I actually think that's just going to be 2 really hard-hitting tank busters in Savage also. I don't think there's going to be a weird tank swap or anything of the sort. So, yeah, I do think there's going to be some more dance moves, but I think adding a few effects to the existing moves, like I mentioned with 2 and 4-snap twist, and making these baited on the players while having to do... You know what would make a lot of sense? 4 separate spotlights, 4 people tethered to frogs, 4 other people with split damage AoEs, and you have to stand in the correct spotlight, aim your frog outward, and then dodge, after you're done dancing. That's a very E10S style mechanic that has already proven to be a pretty decent Savage level mechanic for a lot of people. So to see, I wouldn't be surprised to see them repeat a similar-ish idea here. But at this point, the fight is just looping. I don't think the perfect groove bonus is going to be a thing. I don't think the limit break bonus is going to be a thing. I don't even think this entire let's pose phase where you just dodge half rooms is even going to happen. I just think that the frogs are going to have a totally different section. I wouldn't even be surprised if the moonwalking frogs tethered to players and you had to effectively create the AoE section with them. Like if they pass through a section, it creates like a danger line, or maybe you just aim their path to create their AoE. I don't think the game really wants to do stuff like that. I think that's a good idea in the future. So that's really more of the overly ambitious, like kind of forgetting it's a first fights predictions level of things to expect. But, you know, it's never a bad idea to throw the idea out. You never know when they're going to push the limit on things, and they said they want to, so... we'll see what they have planned. But I think that's good enough for my predictions on the first fight. So with that, let's go over onto the second fight, which I actually think has far more predictable things. Let me get to the second poll because we had a mishap with the first poll. So there's a few really obvious things with Sugar Riot. The tank buster there are 2 different colors on each of the tanks. Probably red paint resistance down, blue paint resistance down, and then you need to tank swap. They do that in E9S. They do that in a lot of fights. I think that's a really obvious thing for the tank busters. There's just going to be a swap, and both tanks are going to be hit both times. Now, for single style and double style, there is a chance we still see single style, but it would have to be combined with something like a Sugarscape. We won't have this super long phase that just explains all the paintings right here. We're probably going to go right into a Sugarscape right from the beginning, and single styles are going to be mixed in with that initially. And then, more likely, double styles are going to be mixed in with that. So that means there's probably going to be less of that random feeling chaos with the Sugarscapes, where there's just bolts of lightning everywhere, where there's the cactus. They could leave some of that in. You got to remember, Honeybee's hardest mechanic was literally a normal mode mechanic that they just threw into Savage. Sugar Riot kind of has the makings of that. There's some mechanics here that are, you know, in normal mode, whatever, they're fine, but they get people, right? But in Savage, if you speed them up, or honestly, if you even just throw one more thing in there, it probably does the trick enough to be a mechanic all on its own without them really needing to try. It's the second tier, so I kind of hope they don't do something as simple as that. But all of these things we're seeing in the single and double style, I expect to see them. One big thing I expect to change is with this bullseye. The bullseye being in the center of the room and telling you where these are going to aim every time. Too simple. I feel like that bullseye is going to be put in like all sorts of different spots. And there could even be two bullseyes at once. And then a double set of arrows. And you need to look at which set of arrows is going off first, which set of arrows is going off second, while you're doing some other mechanic at the exact same time. The double style of them firing, interesting. I think it'd be like double style bullseyes, double style arrows. And you need to... And she'll like tether to one before the other. She does have two different colored tethers. I assume that was just the color of her paint cans. But it could be that the color of those tethers actually determine a first and second order in Savage, which will be far more important because if double style has any sort of like spell and waiting style effect, then knowing the color of those tethers or which gun is firing or any other visual or audio tells is going to be super important. Now, this dot is probably going to be murder when it comes to Savage. For this, it's a little bit weird, the prediction. There's a lot of things they can do, and it really depends on how much they want to push the melee downtime thing, which they said, you know, melees are probably going to struggle to get uptime a little bit more in this tier. For this first one with the cactuses, again, if they just speed this up, maybe throw a single or a double style in here at the same time, that's probably enough, because these cactuses have the makings of something along the lines of Honeybee's phase. The only big difference is that these cactuses aren't player baited. So if there's some form... Oh, maybe the arrows could be like play... Oh, the arrows put a bullseye on a player. She draws... Oh, she can draw things on players. I just realized that's going to be a thing. I didn't even think about that before this. She can just paint players with debuffs. She can paint a player with a bullseye that drops on the player's location and then paint the arrows themselves or paint bombs on players, and then the winged bombs could go forward from the player's location. Oh, okay, see, now we're getting someplace. Now we're getting someplace with everything. Okay. Yeah, but for this phase with the sinkholes, she could do split damage AoE. She could do spread. She could do stacks. Like if she does pairs, that's awful because the corners are so far away from everything. No melee is going to be pleased with that. Either that or tanks or melees are going to try to squeeze two in one corner while the range squeeze in the other corner that's actually in range of the boss there. But yeah, now the whole single and double style painting on the actual players, yeah, that's a big thing. Definitely, I think she's definitely going to paint over players and give them effects that they have some control over. Like, what if she painted the winged bomb on a player and then the player like throws the bomb in the direction they're facing or something like that? You know what I mean? Like there's all sorts of possibilities. And then, or one player has a bullseye, 7 players have an arrow, and they all need to stand in a spot that makes everybody able to be safe. What if that's a tank buster? That'd be a pretty cool tank buster if a tank gets marked with a bullseye and all 7 players have arrows aimed at them, but they're going to take 7 hits. They're not going to do that. Now I'm getting too far out of it, but it'd be a pretty cool idea. You know, tanks want to be a little more involved. That's one way to do it. They want to be a lot more involved, to be fair. Yeah, that's the multi-hit, you know, split damage AoE. Expect pairs, expect light party. There are going to be pairs and light parties somewhere. Literally every Savage mode throws pairs and light parties and spreads in there somewhere while you're doing something else. So for the Riverscape, I think they're going to destroy the bridges at some point, and you're going to need to be on separate islands with some sort of mechanic difference. I also am not convinced the Riverscape will have the same layout. This like 3 island. I won't be surprised if there's like a 3 island and a 2 island and the bridges are destroyed when players hop over. I think a big thing is going to be the thunderstorms being baited on players, and thus it being the player responsibility to determine, okay, who has the thundercloud and how do we successfully cross over to another side while get away from the thundercloud. So let's say you had to place the thundercloud in the northwest section here, which means that you have one player who gets the thundercloud and needs to cross over, and then you have two bridges. And then you have to have like one go one way, one go the other way. So it'd have to be like a 2-3-3 kind of split for that. And that gets a little more difficult because you would need 3 bridges to cross, which maybe they could do like a 4-corner pattern instead of just 3 sections like this. Because if if you break the thing, you'll fall into the river, get dropsy, and that'll probably kill you. So the random thunder bolts, I think, actually will happen. I do think there's going to be at some point where there are just random thunderbolts. I think the cactuses and the thunderbolts being that kind of weird random pattern is going to happen. And again, this big thundercloud, I won't be surprised if that's baited on a player, or even if there's like 4 moderately sized ones that you can place all the way in the corners, and then only the kind of like really close to the center of the room is safe. That's absolutely another possibility. And yeah, I do think that there's going to be some forced player baits on these lightning bolts as well, like spreads that hit 2 rolls at a time. Very similar to E9S, I suppose, is what I was thinking initially. Yeah, would you look at that? See, it's weird because she like charges the red one and then fires from the blue one. So I wonder if that animation is going to do anything different. No, she's almost dead here. So one last prediction that I have. There's going to be a whole nother Sugarscape. I think we've only seen 2 of the 3. I do think both of those will feature. But I think there's going to be an entirely different one that we've never seen before and have to learn from scratch. And number 2, when she teleports to the middle of the room, she kind of leaves a little clone behind. I think she's going to have painted clones that also do single and double styles. And very similar to Black Cat, I think that they're going to be staggered in a sense. You know how Black Cat has the phase where she like summons the clones, she summons 2 clones, and she summons another 2 clones, and you have to like determine what the pattern is. Yeah, I guess it's actually summons 1 clone with 1 mechanic, summons another clone with another mechanic. You know, I could totally see that being a thing as well. It's like single style clone, paints the single style, and then sends a clone off to a direction, and you have to remember what that clone has painted, and then does it with another one, and then you have to do them one at a time while she also does something else. That is very, first or second encounter style. So that's definitely in the cards. Yeah, the whole painting on players thing, I'm definitely holding that to some sort of prediction. I wouldn't be surprised to see like different paint resistance down. So like different players also have to handle different mechanics, and like if you have like yellow paint resistance down, for example, there's some sort of other mechanic that you have to not get hit by, and so the other role needs to be in charge of it. That's a really basic one that's just more fight flavor than it is really unique. But I think that covers all the most important things that are going to happen. Moose Mural is, of course, going to hit way, way harder. So, no surprises there. And let's get over to the Brute Abominator. This looks like a wipe right here. So let's go back to the start of the next pull. So Brute Abominator, I'm going to dash your hopes. I'm almost certain we're just going to start in the 3rd arena. The reason I think that is twofold. 1, markers. If there were only 2 arenas, like maybe we start on the other building first and then go down, that I could kind of see. I just don't think they're going to give us 0 possibilities to put markers down in the final room unless you've cleared. Not that they haven't done that before. They did it retroactively with P7S after people used the third-party tool to do the sleepo markers. So they added the ability to put the markers down after the fight so that people could get the same effect. I don't think they're going to do that here. Like, I don't think they're going to be like, oh yeah, after you clear the fight, you can put markers down in the second room and then you'll have them for the subsequent weeks. No, I think they're just going to start us in the cage. So it doesn't mean, I think all of the mechanics that happen up here are actually going to be almost verbatim used in the cage. And so honestly, my prediction is just that all of this stuff will be there. I don't think there's a single mechanic that's going to be cut from these first phases. I think Brutal Impact is going to get stronger and stronger. In normal mode here, Brutal Impact gets +2 uses every single time it's used. So it goes from 4 to 6 to 8. That's very similar to M3 with the original Brute Bomber. But his went up every time he drank his fake energy drink. Here, the boss doesn't do anything like that. It could be maybe Revenge of the Vines is making it go up, because I couldn't figure out what Revenge of the Vines did here. And Revenge of the Vines, I think the only thing Revenge of the Vines does is it makes all subsequent Revenge of the Vines casts instant. I think, if anything, that's all I could really determine that it does. I don't know. I just never figured it out. Brutus Swing here, I expect to be as is. I just expect maybe the remaining 6 players to have to do like a 3-person light party stack or a 6-person spread. I think that's a pretty reasonable guess to see, like, you know, you have the 2 tanks in front, and then you've got healers at the very back on the left and right. You've got range just after that, and then melees on the flanks or something like that. You know, just a 6-player spread or 2 3-person light party stacks. Now, these, I think, are going to be here, and I think they are going to work almost exactly the same. I think the big difference is these markers aren't going to show up either at all or until the very last second. I think you're going to actually have to look at the vines as they expand in order to determine where the AoEs are going to go. They've gotten a lot more lenient about this, where they do usually flash the AoEs on the screen at the very last second. They've done that a lot more in recent expansion fights to give you some idea of what the safe spots look like, so you can kind of work backwards and figure out the visuals. But that's the only difference for this. I also noticed that Pulp Smash allows you to move the boss. So I won't be surprised if there's some mechanics where you have to have the boss jump pretty far. Like, you need to get really far away from the boss and have him pulp smash in like a specific spot that you then need to escape from, while also either spreading, stacking, or doing light parties. So you'll see that he like jumps onto us, and then you have to do the move out here. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if you need him to land in a very particular spot. Now, these ads, I still don't know if the ads are going to show up. I would like the ads to show up, and I would like the silence responsibility, the interrupt responsibility that the tanks and ranged have here to actually be very, very relevant. I think we don't have enough of this in raids where the interrupts are so important. And here you could do without all of them, but it's a really good thing if all of your interrupts are actually on point and you at least get rid of the donut plus a few of the cross AoEs. I think it would be nice. Now, keep in mind, they could just do 3 ads in normal mode, and that way they kind of are light forcing you into having, you know, the 2 tanks and the 1 fizz range to have 3 interrupts. I just hope they don't get rid of the interrupt bit here. I think it's on the chopping block. I think you could safely predict that this won't be here. But here's the big thing. So it's not even the interrupts that I think are the big important bit here. I think they're going to straight up pull a Melusine here, and you're going to have to petrify these in several different locations in order to hide from Quarry Swamp while not all being on top of each other. So for those who never figured it out, Quarry Swamp, all it requires is that you have an ad between you and the boss. You're basically line of sighting it with an ad. Now, that ad can be alive or it can be dead. When it's alive, the ad gets petrified and then dies in a single hit, which is very much like Melusine worked all the way back in the second Coils. So having 4 different petrified spots here, and then needing to hide, like, so basically 4 players get a, you know, what is it? It's not Cursed Shriek. Cursed Shriek is the AoE one. Cursed Gaze, whatever it's called. And they have to go and petrify their ad. Also works like that in P8S. And then you need to hide behind that ad from Quarry Swamp, wherever it is. Like, maybe he'll either jump to a location, since I predict he'll probably be in the cage. You might need to like have it in such a way where regardless of where he jumps in the cage, you have an option to actually hide from the petrify, because he might do it from the wall instead. He could do it from the middle of the room, but I think he'll also, you can expect he'll do almost every mechanic from the wall as well. And then you probably need to kill them off after that. So I think it's just going to be a basic line of sight mechanic, and that's going to be the primary use for these. But the big difference is that these things are movable here. Will they be movable in Savage? I think that's fair enough to predict. You could have the DPS basically kite them to a spot and then hold them there. And then, you know, they just need to get petrified when they get petrified. And that's A-okay. They honestly, there's a few other things they could do. They could give them like petrify resistance unless they are under 50% health. And then they lose petrify resistance, and then Quarry Swamp works on them. Or even then the player themselves can actually petrify them with the Cursed Gaze. So that's another possibility. I just hope they leave the ads in. You know, we don't usually get ads in Savage fights. Not often enough. And having them be a mechanic, I've always appreciated that in fights. P8S, Melusine, whatever the fight it was. I always appreciate when they try to incorporate them in some important way, in some capacity. So, these, I don't expect these, like, basic things. I don't think these will be here. There's the proximity AoE later that I think will be here. But if we start in the cage, that seems like a very, we're outside of the cage mechanic. Oh, also, for the bludgeoning and the stabbing, I won't be surprised if there is another version of the same mechanic. Neo Bombarian Special. I think, how many of us figured out that we had to go north here? Not a whole lot, it looks like. Oh, wait, we got some. How many made it? Looking at the... Oh, good thing we had a red man. I kind of forgot how this first run went. Because, you know, I was just doing it with... I was just doing it with chat. And then for this, honestly, I think him jumping to the wall and doing mechanics, the lariats, all of that. I think you could take all of this phase. Glower power is a bit of a question mark. I'm not 100% convinced Glower power will be there. Or if it is, they need to put something else with it. Because in isolation, it's not very interesting. It's not very hard. It seems more here because the boss will jump that you don't really have as much space to avoid it. So you can see, yeah, Brutus swing here, and then he's going all the way to the wall. He's going to do the point blank from the wall. I think this whole, like, point blank and bludgeoning from the wall or whatever weapons he might add in. Again, all possibilities. Like, this only seems rough because there's just not a whole lot else. And these I expect to be there. These abominable blinks. I wouldn't be surprised if these were not only proximity AoEs, but they also made them petrify and you had to hide behind the ads in order to do the abominable blinks. That's another thing that could happen. I don't think they'll go that far. Ow. I don't think they'll go that far, but it is indeed a possibility that I have to lay out there. But see how the platforms are covered in vines? I couldn't figure out what that was doing because it didn't seem to be doing anything at all. I figured it just made them easier for him to grip. I don't know. I just couldn't figure it out. Spore Explosion might be in Savage. I'm not convinced a 3-1 dodge is something they're going to prioritize too much, but it wouldn't be. It's not like they've never done 3-1 dodges in Savage. They do them all the time. But as long as they keep something strict with it, it could happen. But if that one doesn't show up, I'm not going to be like, oh no, I can't believe they didn't do Spore Explosion. And from this point on, you've pretty much seen everything. It's just Stone Ringer 2, which I won't be surprised if he Stone Ringer 2s and then uses a weapon and then gives himself another weapon before using the first weapon and then still has a 50-50 chance of which weapon he's going to use. But in this phase, I mean, honestly, I just kind of expect almost all this stuff to be there. The interesting thing with the lariats is that in normal mode, he only does a lariat with the weapon that he used first. So he's doing Stone Ringer 2 here. Whatever weapon he uses first, it leaves his arm open, and that's the one that the lariat is going to come from. So you're going to see, which weapon does he use here? I think he uses he uses the club first here. So I didn't notice it in the first run, but he used it. And now that's the arm that he's going to do his lariat from. You can see right there. So it makes the prediction earlier. Like how I just ran back into it, even though I could clearly see he was charging a lariat. And then he's going to do the point blank from over there. Yeah, I expect all this stuff to be there when we do it in Savage. And the ads here too. The ads being here could actually be really interesting when you combine it with some of my predictions from earlier, especially if you have the point blank versus the bludgeoning. Like that may determine where you're even able to drag them in the first place. Yeah, here's me. Yeah, see, you saw they all got petrified and then all died to the AoE. Yeah, and then I managed to hide from them even though they weren't dead. So them being dead there normal doesn't matter. Either they'll need to be dead in Savage or you'll need to petrify them. But take the fact that they can be petrified by the boss there very seriously, because I think that's actually going to be a big key to the Savage encounter. And from this point, it's just on repeat. Like, yeah, he uses Glower power again in the second bit here, where he does Stone Ringer 2 again. Like, he makes you go to the wall, and then he does this, the Glower power, and then he lariats again, and then he jumps. Like, but I mean, there's nothing here that's really new. You know what I mean? Like, you're just doing Stone Ringer 2, but easier. And then he jumps to the middle, and then he does Brutal Impact 8 times, which I think is going to be frightening, but it is what it is. And then, yeah, nothing else happens. So there's definitely going to be more mechanics. I won't be surprised if he clones himself just like he does in normal mode to do, like, AoEs from other spots. You know how he has the, like, you have to get hit by a lariat mechanic. I actually do think some of his Savage level mechanics are going to come back in a very similar fashion, but there's iterations of most of them here. I think it's just a matter of the clones and whether or not the clones are actually going to show up. And I think they will. I think he will do lariats from clones. I think he will do the whole you have to get hit by one lariat, and that's the lariat that keeps you alive kind of deal. I don't see any reason not to predict literally any of the Savage mode mechanics. I think there's a lot less fire-related mechanics other than the edge of the arena. And I think that's fine. But the fuses, everything, like the bombs that show up, all of it's possible. I mean, he was really good. He was really good about using, like, a lot of theatrics in his fight. And even though he's the Brute Abominator now, I still feel like a lot of theatrics is going to be kind of the crux of the encounter. But other than that, my predictions are done. Now, unfortunately, our final fight to predict, Howling Blade, is not going to be the greatest of things to predict. I just want to see, did we wipe? Yeah, we did wipe on Howling Blade, didn't we? Yeah, we wiped right there. All right, good. So here. So Howling Blade is like a 10th of a fight. Like nothing happens in normal mode. It may seem like stuff is happening, but nothing's really happening. Like, he has a raid wide with extra planner. That's cool. His tank buster is a 2-player stack. Okay, cool. Like, what they could do instead of a 2-player stack is they could make it so it's like the other player needs to block for the first player. So, like, even though it's a 2-player stack here, it could just be that the second tank needs to be in front of the first tank here to block for them. That wouldn't be too bad of an idea. They've done that in plenty of other times, but that's the only way I could see that changing, I suppose. For Wolf's Rain, I just expect this to be combined. I also expect there to be more than 3, and I expect him to do a lot more dashing. I don't think he's just going to dash across once and then do this conal from the side. He's going to, like, have a pattern that he dashes, like 1, 2, 3, and then opposite, and then does the conal. So he's going to be a lot faster, and he's going to cover a lot more ground. See how he only jumps to 1 of them here? I think he's going to just dash between 3 of them, and it's still going to be that, like, you can't really tell what order it is until it starts happening. But you're going to need to avoid the dashes. There's also the possibility that he marks players for where those clones are going to come down, and they leave puddles behind, so you need to make sure those puddles aren't in it. It needs to simultaneously be in a spot where the mechanic works, and the puddles aren't going to be dangerous for anything else. So that's another evolution I could totally see from that. I could also see, again, pairs splitting up on each side of him. So you're going to have your healers needing to split left and right. And then you have all the half rooms here. This is either going to be just way faster like it is later, or it's going to have something else happening. Like the boss is going to be doing half rooms, or something else is going to be happening here if that mechanic is even used in Savage. Because it's just not enough. Shadow Chase, same deal. I feel like this is just going to be combined with... because he's so good at creating clones, like that's like his big thing is to have these like phantom clones of himself. It seems like it's just going to be like a lot of these things layered on top of each other. And this is, by the way, I'm going to throw this out there since I know people are wondering. This is a door boss. I've gone back and forth. I'm almost certain this is a door boss. Also, these only being the 2 sets of 2, that's not going to happen. I'd be surprised. Like, that's going to be like, those things are going to be like hooked onto player locations, and they're going to have like directions that they're facing that are particular, or they're going to be like box patterns, or they're going to be like Exas where it's like the Exa Newliths or whatever they're called, the Exa Bear Fangs or whatever it is. They're going to have a far more complicated pattern than just 2 sets of 2 while you do something else. Shadow Chase AoEs might be there, but honestly wouldn't be surprised. So if this survives into Savage, probably going to have to keep them separated. Quite frankly, keeping them separated here in normal mode makes it a lot easier because you have a lot more space to spread, and you can just converge between them for the stack. That's what we actually did in my when my static. They said, oh, let's practice actually doing that. I'm not convinced this phase will even be here. I think we are getting Wolf Rampant. More specifically, I think it's the E12S, the Lion Rampant, I think we're getting Wolf Rampant here, where there's going to be different wolves with different effects tethered to different players. The boss is going to have uptime the entire time, and you're just going to have to, you know, have certain players bait wolves in certain directions while other players bait something else, and then you're going to have to swap between each other while the boss is doing maybe a wolf's rain or something else that's happening at the same time. I think we're getting Wolf Rampant. I think that whole ad phase is bait, and that's not going to be there. And it's going to be replaced with Wolf Rampant. So for those of you who don't understand, just Light Rampant, Lions Rampant, if you YouTube or Google either of those with Final Fantasy XIV thrown in, you will probably find what I'm referring to. So, and then this, I do think there will be the speed up phase, and I think he might even speed up a second time. Like, I think that this is a pretty cool phase where he just speeds up and does everything way faster, so your reaction time has to go up. I think he could go even faster. I don't think the arena is going to get any smaller, but I think he could go faster. This I'm not convinced will be in Savage. This is a cool normal mode mechanic, and I could see it being thrown into Savage. It is a mechanic a lot of people will struggle with. I know I do, in terms of doing it safely, especially if I'm not just hugging the wall the entire time. But I don't know. I don't really feel like this is not a shoo-in. At the very least for Savage. If they did, honestly, they could just throw these 3 towers in, make the punishment instant death. Or like if you are hit by one, you explode and kill the raid. And that would be, honestly, it would be enough. Slices right is no joke, dude. I know like Ultimate Raiders that can't do slices right. So they could honestly take it pretty easy with that, and they would still have something on their hands, I think. But honestly, there's just not much else. Everything else is the same mechanic as before, but with the wolf heads being thrown in, I think they will do that. I think the wolf heads will maybe be more aggressive doing attacks, and they're going to have they're not just going to be line AoEs. Again, I think most of the time the wolves show up, the wolf heads, they are going to tether to players and have to be baited to do some sort of effect. It's not just going to be line AoEs after you do everything else. It's just not what it's going to be. But there's not really much else to predict. The only prediction that's worth kind of diving into past this, I think, is the prediction of whether Phase 2 will be a wall boss or not. I think the answer is a somewhat yes. So I don't think it'll be a wall boss. I actually think it's going to be a donut boss, like Thunder God Sid in Orbone, where he's a giant mech in the middle of the room, and you have a donut-style arena around him. And I think his hitbox isn't really going to change much more. I think you still won't be able to be max melee the entire time. I think they really want to stress that, and they're going to stress actually needing to run somewhat away from him in the process. But that's the big thing. Now, there is one important detail. This arena has a wall around it. When you're in Phase 1, the arena's bigger, and you cannot be knocked off. However, in Phase 2, the arena is smaller, and now you can be knocked off. It's very interesting because the barrier is still there, which is unusual for a fight where you can fall off. But that could be also the size of the Phase 2 arena being used, and then those come down at some point, or those walls aren't there in Phase 2. And then you have enough space to like kind of carve out a section in the middle for the boss while still having the knockoff. I think that while you can be knocked off in this phase, he does have the knockback when he does the conal AoE. It's silly because there is also a bleed wall, and in Savage, the bleed wall would probably be enough to kill you. So why have a bleed wall and the ability to fall off at the same time? I think that's saying something about Savage that's cut from normal, and that you're going to expect being knocked back or being knocked off to be a far more likely and or threatening thing when it comes to the Savage mode. And again, I think the full size of the arena will come back in whatever the Phase 2 actually ends up being. But yeah, there's unfortunately just not a whole lot because it's just 3 mechanics that get wolf heads, and then he adds the pillars in, plus there's an ad phase. So predictions would have to be kind of just wonky. Like, what do I think his bigger phase will be? I don't know. It depends. Is he going to be like Wicked Thunder, where he throws in some extra soul to try to win? Is he just going to go, because he is kind of like that hero complex that, you know, really enjoys battle, but he's got like kind of a hero complex. I don't know if he's going to like just have like the, I won't fail kind of, but like not the Wicked Thunder, like I can't fail because my life depends on it. His is just like, I guess I'll have to use my full power kind of deal. I think he might. I don't think it's going to be as sinister because this is not really this is we're trying to do him a favor by beating him here in the lore. You know, we're trying to get him to retire. So if he really holds that much value, it really depends. I mean, it could be that the president gives him something and tells him, if you're going to lose, use this, because the president doesn't want him to lose in any capacity. It could be that he loses and he maybe gracefully accepts defeat, but the president steps in and does something to him that he doesn't know about, like forcefully injects him with more feral souls, more ones that aren't allowed, very similar to what happens with the Brood Abominator, and then he becomes a monstrosity as well. I'm not willing to bet. I think he's just going to be like, all right, I've never had the ability to unleash my full power before. Now you'll see what I can really do. You know, some like cheesy, something cheesy like that. But yeah, those are my predictions for the Savage mode for Arcadian. I'm actually really looking forward to this tier. My number one prayer, the third fight has to be good. Now, I'm not saying that because the normal mode is good unless I really want the Savage to be good. I'm saying it because for so many expansions, the third fight in the tier is bad. In the second tier, specifically the 7th raid encounter, is bad. Some of them are questionable. Some people actually do like Guardian, for example, but I would not put Guardian on the same echelon as something like Avatar or All Thoughts, which are some of the best third fights. Actually, some great raid fights in general. But yeah, Guardian, the Idol of Darkness, Agdistis, like we've not had great second tier, third bosses. I want Brood Abominator to beat the allegations. All right. That's all I want for him. Please be a good third fight. I am begging you. I'm not predicting it will be, because you cannot predict how good a Savage will be based on its normal. I'm hoping, please. But anyway, that's going to be a wrap for my predictions for the Savage mode encounters for Arcadian Cruiserweight Division. I myself will be doing hardcore prog, not really world prog this time, just kind of taking it a little bit easier this tier. I've had some stuff going on, so I was kind of glad to take on an easier schedule for prep and everything. But I'll still be going hard. I'll still be trying to clear as fast as possible. Might not be as fast of a clear as I normally get, but that is A-okay, because yeah, it's been a time for me. I'm sure if some of you keep up with my other videos, but regardless, now I'm rambling on. Thanks for watching. I will see all of you in the next video, and until then, take care.